My name's Isaiah Rivera and I have a 50.5-inch vertical. That's officially tested. It is the highest officially tested vertical in the world. And what's important about that, however, is I'm not your typical athlete. I actually took my vertical from average to above average to elite, and I've continued to increase my vertical even as I get into the elite levels. This is different for most athletes because once they hit an elite level, it's really, really difficult to improve. If you look at most pro dunkers out there, they hit a peak and at best, they're able to sustain that vertical. The likely scenario is they stop improving after a while. And the reason that I've been able to break through those plateaus is because I have good training. So today I'm going to be teaching you how to turn your bad training, because you most likely don't have good training. I'm going to teach you how to turn that bad training into good training. And in order to explain that, I'm going to be using one of my favorite exercises, the squat. If you don't know what a squat is, it's a knee extension exercise. You put a bar on your back, or you can put it in a front rack position, and then you literally just squat down and then you squat back up. This is one of the best exercises to jump higher because it's highly specific. What I mean by that, it uses similar angles that you see when you jump. It uses the similar musculature, right? So you use your hips and your quads a lot when you jump, and those are the muscles that are activated the most when you squat. However, when you are programming a squat into a program, you shouldn't just do typical squats, right? You shouldn't just go do sets of 5 every other day and expect to improve year after year after year. You're gonna hit a plateau eventually. Last video I uploaded, I actually touched a little bit on this topic, and it's the principle of variety. If you wanna keep progressing, you have to use variety in your training, right? That way your body keeps adapting. It's subjecting your body to a new stimulus so that it can adapt to it, and then you ideally make specific changes in your body that cause you to jump higher. So with squats, we're just imposing a demand that is gonna specifically cause you to jump higher. Now, you have to be doing other things, of course, to jump higher, specifically jumping, which is the most specific thing. But squatting is a strength exercise. You're gonna improve how much force you can generate. The more force you can generate over the constraint of time in a jump, usually it's about 0.3 seconds to generate force for a 2-foot jumper, the higher you're gonna jump, okay? That's why squats help you. It's like putting a bigger engine in a car. Now, how do you implement variety into your training, and then how do you program it in a year? When we are looking at a training year, typically when I program for athletes, I have them peak twice per year. So we usually peak guys in the winter time and then another time in the summertime. We do that because summertime for a dunker is usually when athletes are wanting to jump their highest and when they're competing, right? We're looking at a dunk season, which I specifically like coaching dunkers. That's my favorite type of athlete to train. They don't have all the complications that team sports cause in terms of training. I like just improving elite performance in an athlete in terms of jumping higher. I want to see an athlete get as close to their genetic limit in terms of jumping as possible, and dunkers are the perfect candidate for that because all you care about is dunking and jumping higher, right? So what we do is we peak them twice. So this is called a macro cycle. You do an entire macro cycle, and at the end, you'll be ideally jumping your highest. That's the point of periodization, peaking at a specific time of the year. And then those macro cycles are split up into mesocycles. So that's where we usually have a specific focus, and they're usually 3 to 5 weeks long. So how do you implement a squat into your mesocycles? What you want to look at is in a specific workout, you're going to keep the squatting exercise in that workout the same week to week to week. So now let me ask you a question. In terms of range of motion, because that's one of the ways that we can implement variety into your training, which one is probably the most specific for 2-foot jumping? Deep squats, half squats, or quarter squats? It will be half squats, right? Because you're at a 90-degree angle when you jump. Half squats, you're at a 90-degree angle at your knee. So it's super specific. For a 1-footer, quarter squats are gonna be more specific. So that means deep squats are more general. So in the early training cycles in the year, we're gonna be using deep squats more. And then as the mesocycles progress through, we'll move on to half squats and then to quarter squats. Okay? So that's one way to program squats into your training. The next thing that we're gonna look at is intensity versus volume. That's what these 2 letters mean right here. Intensity, the easiest way to think about it is just the percentage of your max that you're doing. Volume is how much work you're doing. So I like to think of intensity as like 90% of your max, and then volume is sets times reps. So if you were doing 5x5 at 80% of your max, 80% was the intensity, the volume was the 25 total reps that you did. You can go a little bit more in depth with it, but that's just a very basic way of understanding it and to wrap your head around what intensity and volume is. The key, when you're programming, you want these to be inverted. If intensity is high, you want volume to be low, and vice versa. If volume is low, you can have high intensity. When you are first starting a macro cycle, you want to start with high volume, low intensity. Intensity is way more specific for jumping higher. The more intense your lifts are, the more transfer it's going to have to your vertical jump. The reason we are not going to be lifting at high intensity all the time, however, is because you're going to get hurt. So that's why when we start training, we're going to start with high volume, low intensity. That has a lot of benefits. It's going to build muscle. It's going to increase work capacity. It's going to decrease your injury risk when you move on to more specific stuff later on. And my car analogy, we're putting a bigger engine into the car, and then the specific stuff later on is like putting a supercharger on top of that car, right? So as the year progresses on, then we're gonna flip-flop it, and volume's gonna drop, intensity is gonna increase, okay? If you did it correctly, when you get to these cycles where intensity is high and you deload from them, you're gonna be feeling sharp, you're gonna be jumping high, you're gonna have that electric feeling. When you know that feeling when you walk into a basketball court, you're excited, you feel like you got a pep in your step. You take that warm-up jump to just touch the net and you jump 3 inches higher than you normally do for that effort level. That's how you're gonna feel in those high intensity, low volume cycles. But if you didn't do this work first, instead, you're gonna feel hurt when you do this stuff. So very, very important that you follow that progression. Now, the last thing that we're gonna cover, this is the more complex part of programming. It's something called the force velocity curve. Force is any influence that can change an object's position, speed, shape. So it's you imposing your will into your environment. And the magnitude of that is how much force you're generating. When looking at any physical movement, there's a concentric part and eccentric part. Eccentric is when your muscle is lengthening under tension. Concentric is when it's shortening under tension. So think about it in a squat. Eccentric is when you're lowering, so your quad is stretching while it's being loaded. And then the concentric part, your quad is being loaded while the muscle is shortening, okay? And then velocity is just change in distance over time. It's how fast you're moving. When we're looking at the force velocity curve, we're looking at the musculotendinous unit. So that's your muscle and your tendon, how it moves. In terms of the whole unit, what is happening? Is it lengthening or is it shortening? You can look at specifics of what the muscle is doing in a movement. You can actually see, right, in the lowering part of a jump for a really good athlete, what you could actually see is the muscle is shortening. So there's a concentric action in the muscle and it's pulling the tendon. So you're seeing a stretching in the tendon while there's a shortening in the muscle. But we're looking at the whole unit, the muscle and the tendon, when looking at this curve. When we're programming, we want to surf the force velocity curve. Specifically, we want to surf this side of the curve. Well, think about it as starting like right here, all right? And then you surf it this way as the year progresses. This stuff is more specific. This stuff here is going to be more general. So let's look at a sprint, right? For the concentric action. So that's the push off. A sprint, it's the fastest thing you can do. However, force isn't going to be very high, right? But it's flip-flop. On the eccentric side, so a touchdown, the forces are highest when velocity is at its very highest. Exercises that mimic being fast during eccentric muscle contraction are going to have more transfer to sprinting and 1-foot jumping, right? Now, when you look at something like a 2-foot jump, it's slower than a sprint. So it's gonna be more correlated to max strength. If you were to see a 1-rep max squat, it's gonna be over here. Super, super, super heavy, so force is high, not very fast. So it's gonna be around right there. If you look at here, I have isos, eccentric overloaded squats, tempo squats, pin squats. These are all variations of squats that you can use that are gonna surf the force velocity curve in different types of ways. I just told you what a regular squat is. You can also think of it as a tempo squat. So a tempo squat, think of it as a very slow squat, like a 8 count on the way down, 8 count on the way up. It's gonna be really high force, very, very low velocity. It's gonna be around right there. Now you can decrease the tempo in the squat and do it very fast, right? Maybe put 30% of your body weight on the bar, squat down fast, squat back up, and it's gonna be over here somewhere. It's gonna be way less force that you're gonna be generating concentrically. It's gonna be moving faster. it's gonna be over here. And then on the eccentric side, you're gonna be somewhere over here. Another way that we train for plyos would be placed around here, is eccentrically overloaded squats. We've played around with these a lot at THP. You put more weight on the bar, then you can lift up concentrically, and then you lower it as slow as you can. And that's gonna allow you to handle this stuff later on. So I would categorize that exercise as somewhere right here, probably in like this first third. You could do maximal isos, so that's gonna be right here in the middle. It's gonna have zero velocity, but concentrically, in an isometric condition, that is the most force that you can generate. So that's gonna be around right here somewhere. And then you have something like a pin squat, which is also very similar to here. Not quite maximal isometric, but just before it, you're starting from zero and then generating force into the bar. How we would fit all these things together. Earlier in the year, deep squats. Later in the year, you move on to half and then quarter. Start with high volumes, low intensity. End the year with high intensity and low volume. And then you can use all these variations of squats. Start by doing regular squats or tempo squats even before a strength cycle that you're gonna be working on. Move on to regular squats, then you can do pin squats, then you can move on to an isometric condition and then to an eccentric overloaded squat. And then from there, you can start messing around with plyos or trap bar jumps, squat jumps with the empty barbell. That's gonna be an even more of a speed strength stimulus on this side, and it's gonna cause you to jump higher. Something to keep in mind, however, is when you're doing the very high specificity training, is the fatigue effects are also going to be very specific. So if you're jumping a lot, you're going to fatigue the systems that cause you to jump, make you jump higher. So your performance is going to drop down quite a bit until you unload. And when you deload, you're going to freshen up and jump way higher. I know I just spit up a bunch of information at you guys. If you guys want us to implement these things into your training, by us, I mean the guys at THPstrength.com. Go to our website, it's in the bio. Use the code THP for 10% off your first month. There's also a free course down there that you can go, and there's a free week of training to check us out and see if you like it. Aside from that, please like the video. A bunch of free information I just gave you guys. Hope you learned at least one thing from it, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out.